All right, so when we last left off, we were talking about solving systems by substitution. I decided we'll just break this section into two parts. No sense overwhelming you guys. So if you're watching this or watching the last video, you can treat it as two separate days. I'll do a part one, part two. This will be part one. So in part one, you only have to go through number 4 on your worksheet. And then just finish up the worksheet on part 2, or you can do it all in one day and then take a break. It's kind of up to you, however you want to do it. So that was substitution. Moving on to elimination. So again, elimination is something we've also done before. Only now we're dealing with x squareds and y squareds. But the process pretty much is exactly the same. So with elimination, we want to add or subtract to cancel out a variable. So here we notice we have 25 on both of them. So what we want to do here is subtract. That would give us 32x squared. These would cancel out when you subtract. And then when you subtract these two, you're going to get 150, or not 150, come on. That's embarrassing. 128. So then we would divide that by 32. Oh, and let's see. Oh, what are we going to get? Is that 4? Yep, that would be 4. So x squared equals 4, meaning x equals positive and negative 2. So just like yesterday, we could have more than one solution. So what we want to do is plug in 2. Let's use the second equation. The numbers are a little smaller there. So if we plug in 2, we would get 4 times 2 squared, and then plus 25y squared equals 41. So 2 squared is 4, and that squared is 16, plus 25 squared, or y squared equals 41. Obviously subtract the 16. So 25y squared would equal 25. Divide by 25, y squared equals 1. So y is going to equal positive or negative 1. So and obviously when we plug in a negative 2 here, we're going to get the same thing, right? So our answers end up being, so if we plug in 2, we get 1, and then we also get a negative 1. And then if we plug in a negative 2, we get 1 and also a negative 1. So those would be the 4 solutions there. All right, next up, you'll notice that nothing cancels right away. So what we'll have to do is do some, excuse me, some multiplication to get rid of these variables at the bottom. So it kind of depends on how you want to do it, I suppose. But one way you could do it is you can multiply, say this top one, let's just say by 3. Because if you multiply this by 3, it's going to get us y squared. So if we multiply it by 3, we would have 3x squared over 5 plus regular y squared equals 45. And that's with the x squared plus the y squared equals 20. So we would subtract. So the easy part, 45 minus 20 is 25. The y squareds are gone. Now this 3x squared minus x squared. Okay, now x squared we could also write as, just write it over here so you see what I'm doing. So 3x squared over 5 minus, now we could call it 5x squared over 5 if we want. Still x squared, right? Now we have a common denominator. 3x squared minus 5x squared is going to be a negative 2x squared over 5 there. So then we would multiply both sides by 5. I think I'm doing all that right. Times 3. Times 5. Yeah. So then I would get negative 2x squared equals 125. All right. So when we just left off, we were doing solving systems using substitution, also graphing. I decided I'd split this up into 2 days to give you a little more time so you're not overwhelmed. So you can treat this one as its own lesson and just get up to number 4 done on the 10-7 worksheet. So we'll kind of call this one 10.7 part 2. If you want to do them all on the same day, that's your choice. It's kind of up to you how you break that up. But moving on to elimination. So we've done elimination before. What we have here is, again, two systems, and we want to add or subtract to cancel out a variable. Well, since we have 25 twice, we're going to subtract these two. We're going to get 32x squared, and then subtract the 169 minus 41, and we're going to get 128. And then divide both those by 32, we get x squared equals 4. So x is going to equal positive and negative 2 when we square root those. So then we got to plug in positive and negative 2. Let's go ahead and plug it into this equation right here. So if we plug in 2, it would be 4 times 2 squared plus 25y squared equals 41. So 2 squared is 4, times 4 is 16, and equals 41. We can subtract the 16, divide by 25, so y squared equals 1. So y equals positive and negative 1 when x is 2. So we'd have 2, 1, and we'd have 2, negative 1. So then we got to think, okay, what if we plug in negative 2? Well, if we plug in negative 2, this is still going to end up being a 4. So we're going to get the same two answers. So we'd have negative 2 and 1, and then negative 2 and negative 1. And that finishes out our 4 solutions there. So next one, here not everything quite matches up, so we need a little multiplication. So there's a couple ways you could do it. One way right off the bat is you can multiply this first equation by 2, the second one by 3, because that would give you 6's both here and here. So that would give us 6x squared, 2 times 4y, so 8y squared, and then equals 32. And then these by 3 give us 6x squared minus 9y squared equals 15. So now we could subtract, cancel out our x squareds. So 8y squared minus 9y squared is negative y squared there. And then that's going to equal, if we subtract these two, or sorry, negative 17, positive, what am I thinking? We're subtracting. Come on, Mr. Schwartz. And then we get, over here subtracting, we're going to get 17. So here y squared is going to equal 1 when we divide. So y is plus or minus 1. And then again, we can plug back in. Let's just plug it back into the second equation here. So when we do that, we would have 2x squared minus 3, negative 1 for y squared equals 5. So that would be 2x squared. Let's see, that would be 1 times negative 3 is negative 3 equals 8. And then, oh, not 8, I'm getting ahead of myself. 5. When we add 3, we're going to get 8. So then x squared would equal 4. So x is going to be positive or negative 2. So it's almost the reverse of what we had up here in a way. And that was plugging in 1 for y, or negative 1 in for y. If we plug in 1, we're still going to get the same answer. So here's our solutions. We have 1, 2. We have 1, negative 2. And then we also have the, oh, I'm going backwards here. Sorry about that. Losing my mind. So let's undo that. Okay, this is plus or minus 2. So when y is 1, we'd have an answer of 2, 1, and then 2, negative 1. And then we also have negative 2, 1, and then negative 2, negative 1. I think I got all those right now. And those are 4 solutions there. One more here to get to. All right, so scroll down here, give myself a little bit more room. Move these guys over. So here it looks like we got a lot more going on, right? But I can see right off the bat, hey, if I subtract, I can get rid of my y squared. So let's go ahead and give that a try. So subtracting everything, we'd have negative 9x squared there. Negative minus negative is a positive, so they cancel out. Negative 6 minus negative 15. Give me positive 9x. Negative 16 minus negative 16 is nothing. Negative 60 minus negative 60 is nothing. 0 minus 0 is 0. So then what we want to do is we want to factor out a negative 9x here. So that would leave us with just an x, and then this would be a minus 1. So because of this, x could equal 0, or part of this, x could equal 1. So now we got to go back in and plug 0 and 1 in. Let's just plug it back into this first equation. So if x is 0, that would give me a 0 here. So then I would have minus y squared. This is 0 minus 16y minus 60 would equal 0. So then if I factor that out, let's see, I better go over here and do it. Make everything, switch the sign on everything to make it easier to factor. So plus 16y plus 60. So then we get a factor. So y and y. Let's see, 60 I know is 4 and 15 go into that. But that's not going to work. What else goes into 60? It's 12 and 5. That won't get me 16. 20 and 3. That's not going to work either. Ugh. Why has it got to be so tough? What are my other factors of 60? 8 doesn't go in there. 4 does. 6 and 10. That's the one I want. That one should have been the most obvious, you'd think. So we'd have a negative 6 and a negative 10. So we get 0, negative 6, and 0, negative 10 are answers. Okay, and then we're going to go back and we're going to plug in 1 for x. So try to use a different color. I'm going to kind of run out of room, but I'll try to squish it in here. I'll use black. I haven't used black yet. So if I plug in the 1, so 2 times 1 squared, that would be 2. Oops, give me minus y squared. Minus y squared. Plug in a 1, that would just be a minus 6. Then minus 16y minus 60 equals 0. So combine my like terms, negative y squared minus 16y. So you have a 2, a negative 6, so it'll be negative 4. And then minus 60 is a negative 64. Go ahead and divide everything by negative 1. So plus 16y plus 64. That's a pretty easy one to factor. I would get y plus 8 and y plus 8. So that means y is negative 8. So my last solution here would be 1 and negative 8. And there you go. So make sure you're plugging them back in to get your answers. That does it for substitution. The final problem is a review on completing the square to come up with an equation for a conic and identify the conics. So if you forgot how to do that, go back to 10.6 part 2 is what you need to watch to figure that one out. So good luck with that and have a good one.